Hey ladies and gentlemen, it's William Bellamy. I'm back. This is the second part of my videos on Marxism, socialism, and communism. Today we're going to talk about a country that at one point was the breadbasket of Africa that now suffers from major malnutrition and 50% unemployment. And we're also going to talk about how you take a country with the largest oil reserves in the world and drop the economy by 18%. Well, let's get started. Now, in talking about communism, as I said in the last video, with 23 years in the Army, I've met a lot of people in former communist countries or served with people from those countries that later immigrated to the United States and went in the military. I was also privileged to spend 9 months in Afghanistan as a liaison with a Romanian Army battalion in which all the senior leadership has started their careers under the Soviet Union. Now, with that being said, I couple that with degrees in international relations and economics, so I do understand the theoretical and the practical implications of what happened in those countries and why. And I understand a theory that led them to think it would be a better way. Now, to start with, Robert Mugabe led the winning revolutionary party in what became Zimbabwe, formerly the country of Rhodesia. We're not going to rehash, nor am I in support in any way, shape, or form of minority rule. It was not right, but what it led to with Robert Mugabe was not exactly the goal that was stated. Now, I will say in his favor, when Mr. Mugabe assumed control, he quickly instituted policies, and one of his greatest policies was he took a literacy rate that was sitting at 26% and it was at 82% within 10 years. That's incredible. Now, moving into the 90s, they basically nationalized the farms. The goal with the stated goal of nationalizing the farms was to give them to the landless majority population. Well, the majority of the best farmland actually went to politicians and party members that were loyal to Mugabe. The rest that did go to the landless majority, it all ended up in the same issue. It was just like collectivization within the Soviet Union or China. The people placed in charge of these farms did not know how to run them, which led to man-made famine, which led to starvation. If you don't have food, you cannot do anything else within your own country. And then you're dependent on handouts from China or the then Soviet Union or Cuba, but your people starve. They suffer malnutrition, which leads to unrest, which leads to military crackdowns, which happened in Metabeleland. Now, with that being said, as things got worse, he went back to rhetoric. Now, on one hand, Robert Mugabe has some of the best and funniest one-liners you'll ever hear from a leader. He really does. On the other hand, I'll give you a couple of his quotes. In the 90s, he called on supporters to strike fear in the hearts of the white man, our real enemy. That was his answer to starvation, was to blame it on somebody else. He's also referred to homosexuals as being guilty of subhuman behavior. Now, you have a country where he did raise the literacy rate, but due to corruption, a lack of food, a lack of infrastructure maintenance or improvement, you end up with all these issues that come with it, to include the 50% unemployment rate. No country can survive with a 50% unemployment rate. They're dependent on other countries just to survive. Now, Mr. Mugabe has passed, and like I said, I'm not going to rehash what happened leading to Zimbabwe being formed, because there are rumors about what he did in charge of his guerrilla party, but he was an avowed Marxist. And when in doubt, he would revert back to his Marxist training and blame others. Only in this case, it wasn't the Soviet Union blaming the United States. It was Robert Mugabe blaming whites, which for the most part had already left the country and controlled nothing. The mismanagement and the appointment of party loyalists as opposed to people who actually knew what they were doing is what led to those man-made famines. Now, as I said, moving on, how do you take a country sitting on top of the largest oil reserve in the world and end up with a malnourished population? Just, if you could have before he died, you could ask Hugo Chavez. Hugo Chavez came to power as a socialist. His background in socialism, if you want to read up on it, he actually discovered it while serving as an army officer. And it kind of led him on a path through various underground groups until he eventually became president of the country. Almost immediately, he started pushing for changes to the Constitution, giving him more power. When their parliament wouldn't agree to that, he closed parliament and had members reappointed that were loyal to him. Now, one thing that I will say with Chavez, as many times as he ran for office and was elected, there was never a hint that he stuffed ballot boxes. The elections, as far as anybody could tell, were fair. People did love him. The reason people loved him is he took this oil money and basically created a social welfare state that was not sustainable. All his investments went to subsidize things for the people, and when the price of oil fell, well, that no longer worked. He no longer had the capital to work with to pay for these programs. And it brings up a great quote from Margaret Thatcher: socialism is the perfect system until you run out of other people's money. Now, by him focusing everything on social programs instead of infrastructure or creating sustainable industry, that means anything Venezuela has is completely directed by the price of oil. Now, with the price of oil dropping, that means everything gets more expensive. They can't subsidize everything anymore. By 2016, the economy had declined by 18.6% because he directed all spending for these programs to keep himself getting reelected. Now, when he started to fall apart, you started seeing protests in the streets in which civilian militias loyal to Chavez were being armed by the government to attack these militias. Now, with Chavez's passing, you have Nicolas Maduro, who took over, who really is doing nothing more than hiding and doing the same thing. He's turning these militias on the protesters. But that's about all I have right now. Do your own research. If you question anything I say, please bring it up in the comments. I'm not closed-minded. You could change my mind. Now, on the other hand, please like and subscribe if you like what I'm saying. Share it with your friends. If you don't like it, then hit dislike and tell me in the comments what you dislike about it. We can talk about it. You might even change my mind. You may even turn me into a socialist before it's all over. But like, subscribe, and share, or dislike and comment on what you think is wrong with it. Thanks. You guys have a good evening.